Simon van Noort from EasyCo Museum, and he will talk about parasitoid wasps, why they are essential for our survival. Simon?
Thank you, Fulu, and thank you also to the NSCF for the opportunity to talk about parasitoid wasps. Today I'm going to talk about why parasitoid wasps are essential for our survival and why we really do need them in our lives. And I'm also going to briefly touch on and highlight the value of museum collections and the essential baseline data that they provide, which is necessary for making informed conservation management decisions. All right, so wasp, bees, and ants belong to the order Hymenoptera. It's a hyper-diverse order of insects. They're ecologically and economically very, very important. And they play roles as pollinators and parasitoids and predators. And through these means, they are providing critical ecosystem services. So most of us know that bees are very, very important pollinators, but wasps also visit flowers and they play an important role in pollination. And both these groups play a critical role in the functioning of any ecosystem. That includes the evolution of floral species richness and also food security. So it's almost, well, 1 in every 3 mouthfuls of food that we eat is reliant on pollination services provided by insects. And the global value of pollination worth is estimated at more than $3 trillion US. So some of these Hymenoptera, in particular ants, also play a valuable role as indicator species in conservation and ecological monitoring. And ants, along with termites, are critical role players in nutrient recycling. Both these groups are super abundant and are responsible for the majority of turnover of nutrients in ecosystems. And both parasitoid and also predatory wasps are obviously playing a vital ecological role as controllers of other insect populations. And this includes pests that attack our agricultural and forestry industries and also impact on human and animal health. And many of these parasitoid wasps have vast potential for use in managed biocontrol programs. But to manage and conserve these insects, we actually need to inventory and describe the species that are involved. This is a critical fundamental prerequisite before we can understand the role that they're playing in ecological processes. So just about every single species of insect and arachnid in the world is attacked by parasitoid wasps, and in many cases by more than one species of parasitoid wasp. Many of these parasitoids are highly host specific because over evolutionary time they've had to overcome the natural defense of the host insect or arachnid, but there are some that are more widespread in their taste and they attack more than one host insect or arachnid species. Now, some parasitoid wasps are actually invasive pests themselves, and others may be attacking host insects that are of critical conservation concern. And so it's really, really very important to understand the ecological role and the biology of these parasitoid wasps in any given host interaction. So the order Hymenoptera is by far the most species-rich insect order. That is when we take the undescribed species into account. Currently, there are about 150,000 described species of Hymenoptera. And beetles, there are more described species of beetles, but if we take the undescribed species into account, the Hymenoptera are by far the richest. And this is based on an extrapolation, well, an understanding and a realization that there are 2 to 3 parasitoid wasp species associated with every other insect species on this planet. In Africa, we have about 20,000 described species of Hymenoptera, but I estimate that we have only described somewhere between 5 and 20% of the species, and the true figure is somewhere closer to 100,000 to 500,000 species. So effectively, we know very little about our incredible insect species diversity, and even with the described species, we know very little about their biology and the ecological interaction. So there's a huge amount of work that we still need to do. So obviously through their lifestyle strategy, parasitoid wasps control other insect populations. And without this natural control, we would experience massive population explosions of insects, and many of these would be in plague proportions that would decimate our environment, attacking our agricultural and forestry industries as well. So parasitoids are essential contributors to food security, also natural product resource security, such as forestry products, and to maintaining our environmental life support systems in a healthy state. And then as hyperparasitoids, there's some parasitoids that attack other parasitoids. So the parasitoid wasps themselves are controlling populations of other parasitoid wasps. And they attack just about every developmental stage of the host insect, from eggs through to adults. And different species often specialize on a certain developmental stage of the host. Some are egg parasitoid specialists. Others attack caterpillars and emerge as adults from the pupae. Others are pure pupal parasitoids. But in any given host web scenario, there are numerous feeding levels. There are numerous trophic levels, and it's a very complicated interaction and quite difficult to unravel as to who's eating who in these systems. So you can have a parasitoid attacking a host insect species, and then another parasitoid attacking that parasitoid, and another parasitoid attacking the parasitoid that's attacking the parasitoid that's attacking the host. So you get a whole hierarchy of trophic levels, and it's not necessarily a vertical hierarchy. It can actually go horizontally as well. All right, so just out of interest, there's the smallest insects in the world are parasitoid wasps. The smallest winged insect is a species of fairy fly mamarid wasp, Kikihuna, and at 0.15 millimeters, this is a fully formed adult female. There's in fact a smaller one, a wingless male of another fairy fly wasp species that's only 0.13 of a millimeter. So these fully formed adult wasps are almost only 1/10 of a millimeter long. And the reason that they are so small is that they attack other eggs of other insects. And often those eggs of insects are very, very tiny. And the parasitoid wasp larvae is dependent on the food resource that's provided by that egg. There's one wasp larvae developing in each egg. So that resource constrains the size of the larvae and subsequently the size of the adult wasp. So many parasitoid wasps are used in biocontrol programs, deliberately used to control pest species of insects that are attacking agricultural products, and also to control alien invasive insects and plants. And this reduces the need for insecticides and subsequently mitigates the resultant knock-on effects on the health of our broader environment. And yeah, so there are also invasive species, both insects and plants, that have major negative impacts on our indigenous ecosystems, and these are often kept under control by parasitoid wasps. And on the left here, we have an example of the alien invasive large cabbage white, the two main parasitoids in South Africa that attack this alien invader. There's a Cotesia agglomerata, which is a braconid wasp that attacks the caterpillars. And then there's a pupal parasitoid, Pteromelas puparum, that lays its eggs in the pupae and emerges from the pupae. And both these two wasps effectively control the large cabbage white, which feeds on cabbages, obviously. And just to highlight some other cases of parasitoids that contribute to our food security, there's a parasitoid wasp, Cotesia plutella, that attacks the diamondback moth, whose caterpillars feed on cabbages and cruciferaceae. And this moth species is actually resistant to insecticides. So the deployment of this biocontrol agent, which was imported from Europe, is actually very important to control the population of the diamondback moth. Another species that attacks our agricultural industry is the Patera Tuba moth, whose caterpillars feed on potatoes, obviously. This moth originated from South America, and we imported a parasitoid wasp, Panthelus subandinus, which effectively controls this agricultural pest, and in the process reduces the need for the use of insecticides. The false codling moth is a worldwide pest of cotton and nuts and citrus, and it's a species that actually originated in Africa. And this is controlled also by an egg parasitoid. This is a little trichogrammatid wasp, and the total length of that body is about 0.5 millimeter long. The scale bar is a tenth of a millimeter, and this is a fairly effective control agent of the false codling moth. So turning to our natural resource security, the forestry products which are impacted by alien invasive, in this case it's a wasp, it's a Cyrex wood wasp, and so the larvae are wood borers, and they attack the Monterey pine, Pinus radiata, and we imported a parasitoid wasp, Ibalia, that is a very effective control agent of this wood boring wasp invasive species. The other wood borers, this is a Carpenter moth in the family Cosidae, and it's an agricultural pest attacking quince and apple trees, but recently it's emerged as a major pest of our plantations, our eucalyptus plantations. And a couple of years ago, we described a new species of parasitoid wasp that was reared from logs that are infested with the larvae of this moth. And although we haven't got a direct association yet, this parasitoid wasp is probably attacking the moth larvae, and hence has potential for use as a natural biocontrol agent of this pest species. So invasive water weeds are also a major issue. This is the Brazilian water weed is a problem in South Africa. It is controlled by a biocontrol agent, a leaf mining aquatic fly, but this fly is then attacked by parasitoid wasps, which potentially then have a negative impact on the biocontrol of this invasive water weed. But then we do also have a hyperparasitoid that attacks the parasitoid wasps that are attacking the fly. So this one's probably beneficial in the system. But this is all new research, so there's a lot of work to be done on this system as well. Another invasive water species is a water hyacinth, and we recently established that indigenous wasp is attacking the plant hopper that was introduced as a biocontrol agent. This is the plant hopper with the wasp larvae protruding from it, and the adult female has got claspers on her front legs, and she uses these claspers to grab a living plant hopper, and while she's got it under control, she lays an egg into the plant hopper and then lets it go alive, so it continues its normal life, and the wasp larva benefits from the host insect's natural camouflage and ability to avoid predators. So although parasitoid wasps, most of their nutrition comes from the larval stage when they're feeding on the host. The adult wasps also need nutrients, and they often get this from body fluids of the host in the process of laying an egg into it. They puncture the exoskeleton of the host insect, but they also need to feed on nectar for the energy requirements. And in this process, they perform critical pollination services. Some of these interactions are highly specialized. The most well-known is the example of an obligate mutualism that exists between fig wasps and their host fig trees, neither partner of which can survive without the other. The fig trees are completely reliant on these tiny parasitoid fig wasps for pollination, and they can't breed anywhere else except inside figs. Now, fig trees are keystone species in tropical ecosystems. There are many other animals that rely on the food resources provided by the ripe fig crop for their own survival, from lizards right up through to the major primates. So lots of these pollinating wasps would have certainly have catastrophic cascading effects on ecosystem functioning. So to end off, I'm going to touch a bit on the value of museum collections and the essential baseline data resources that we conserve in these collections. And although we have many specimens and species already collected and conserved in our collections, with a rapid increase in rates of human-induced environmental destruction and the habitat transformation that we're seeing at the moment due to these anthropomorphic effects and to climate change, the implementation of ongoing initiatives to survey our ecosystems is really a matter of priority. And yeah, it's the vast majority of vegetation types in South Africa really are undersampled. And every new inventory survey that we implement, it actually produces hundreds to thousands of undescribed species of wasps. So over the last 30 years, I've implemented numerous continuous quantified inventory surveys, and based on counts in the samples and extrapolations, I estimate that over 10 million specimens have been collected through these inventory surveys. And these are all housed in the Iziko South Africa Museum collection. And so we've got this wealth of unlocked biodiversity data. And although they're safeguarded in our collections, we really need to unlock them, process them. 300,000 of these specimens have already been curated and identified, and their associated metadata mobilized and digitized on Specify. But we need this mobilized metadata. It's essential baseline data to assess rates of spatial and temporal change in our invertebrate species richness and abundance. So we can make informed decisions about what is happening with our biodiversity. So given that we have this very limited baseline data, we're not able to assess the local South African extent of the insect Armageddon the globe is experiencing. And as I've said already, this is a goldmine of biodiversity data that we need to mobilize to inform rates of decline in our insect populations. There's absolutely no doubt that in South Africa, we are also rapidly losing much of our biodiversity heritage, but we really don't know. We don't have any idea of the rate that this is happening at. So with leverage of appropriate resources to mobilize this data and through the research conducted by international specialists, we'll be in a far better position to make these critical assessments. And yeah, we need to understand that we're losing species to extinction faster than we can discover and describe them. So it really is a race against time. And yeah, so the capacity constraints, getting on top of the huge numbers of specimens that we've collected. There are major logistical issues here. It's based on time that it's taken to identify and curate specimens and mobilize the metadata. I estimate that just to do 1 million specimen takes 1,000 years for one person, but we could get it done in 25 years if we have 40 research assistants. But this is very expensive. It's going to need 150 million rand for this. So we've got this major bottleneck here already. And then we've got another bottleneck. We've only described 5 to 20% of the Afrotropical wasp species. Another major bottleneck here in terms of systematics. And if we look at a little graph showing what we've inventoried so far, this little dot down the bottom, so that it looks like the horizontal scale is not showing, but that's effort. And then on the vertical scale, that's time. So we've done this small amount of inventory surveys, and we've already got this major bottleneck at data mobilization level and at systematics level. We need to do this amount of inventory survey, which is obviously going to have a knock-on effect onto the bottleneck that we've already got. And this impacts the whole value chain up through the different spheres of curation and identification and digitization of our biodiversity, ultimately implementing this data for effective conservation management decisions or policies, and for the realization of benefit of science and society. This is a long process. This doesn't take a year. It doesn't take 5 years. It takes 10 or 20 years from sampling to actually realize the benefit to science and society in the end. Yeah, so it is now more important than it has ever been to mobilize taxonomic resources. and to leverage appropriate funding to focus our effort on the discovery, description, and documentation of our wealth of unknown species. It really, really, really is important. And there's a nice little paper that was published last year by Cardoso et al. On scientists' warning to humanity on insect extinctions. And I'd really encourage you to go and download that. It's openly available, and read it. It gives a nice overview of where we at and what we need to do to mitigate the impact we're having on our very own life support systems. It's just not sustainable anymore. And in the end, it's extremely sobering to realize that the vast majority of our known insect species are in fact parasitoid wasps. And so if anyone has got an interest in pursuing taxonomy and they want to work on a super unknown, hyper-diverse group of insects, the parasitoid wasps are wide open for investigation. And finally, it just leaves me to acknowledge the many funding agencies that have contributed to this initiative over many of the years. Thank you very much.